Welcome to the 21st century Covid-19 blood libel against the Jews and the Jewish state of Israel. As you all know, social media censorship is growing, and my voice at the Pulse of Israel is getting hit as well. The very best way you can help support our work is to simply sign up for my newsletter on the Pulse of Israel website. And if you are already a member, thank you very, very much. And everyone, share the videos. Okay, as anyone who follows me knows, anti-Semitism, Jew hatred always was and always will be. It never goes away. It just appears in new forms with each generation. Sometimes stronger than others, but always, always present. So, what is this latest blood libel against the Jews? Check out this Guardian headline, parroted across various media platforms around the world, all spreading this modern blood libel against us. Quote, human rights groups accuse Israel of ignoring obligation to millions in occupied territories who may wait months or for vaccination. Basically, they are accusing the Jewish state of Israel in purposefully refusing to help save the lives of our Arab Muslim neighbors in Judea, Samaria and Gaza by refusing to give them vaccinations. And the global media continues to parrot this lie. It's been a few weeks already, including CNN's Christian Amanpour, who recently said that Israel is required under international law to provide vaccines for Palestinian Arabs. Back on June 11th, 2020, it was reported that the Palestinian Authority refused on Wednesday a plane load of medical supplies from the United Arab Emirates to help fight coronavirus in the Palestinian Authority, since it was coordinated with Israel rather than with them. And now the world is attacking Israel for not giving the Palestinian Authority vaccines? Hello, folks. As any country, our moral obligation is to our citizens, Jews, Christians, and Muslims. Israel has no obligation to give any vaccines to an enemy entity that won't even accept medical supplies to help its own people because it landed in Israel without first coordinating with them. It all comes down to this. As former Israeli Prime Minister Golda Meir once said, "We will only have peace when the Arabs love their children more than they hate us." It is an absolute disgrace that the world bodies and media outlets are bashing Israel instead of bashing the Palestinian Authority. They are the ones who have placed their genocidal hatred of Israel over saving the lives of their own people. Yet, Israel is being bashed because we're doing such a wonderful job in distributing vaccinations to our own citizens, to our own population, like any country should do, instead of calling out the hatred and disgraceful attitude and how they do not treat their own people under their control, their own Arab Muslims in Judea and Samaria and Gaza. It is just so sad. So, let's break down this latest blood libel against the Jewish state and Jews. First of all, international legal expert Brooke Goldstein tweeted this in response to CNN's Christian Amanpour. Fact check. The Oslo Accords say the exact opposite, and Palestinians have denied Israel's vaccine offers. It's a shame CNN allows its correspondent to repeatedly spew Jew hatred, right? She lays out the international law. Israel has no legal obligation. Now let's continue to another eloquent tweet bashing the anti-Israel lies of the media, posted by Arsen Ostrovsky. Quote, to all those parroting the why is Israel not giving Palestinians COVID-19 vaccines? 1, Israel not obliged, right? We don't have to, as Brooke already said. 2, the Palestinian Authority specifically asked not to, as they want to themselves. As an aside, actually, since this global media campaign parroting this bashing of Israel, the Palestinian Authority now has made this an issue, but initially they did not ask Israel for help at all. Going back to Arsen's point number 3 in his tweet, perhaps if the Palestinian Authority wasn't paying hundreds of millions of dollars in terrorist salaries, they could do this faster, right? They could use that money instead to purchase vaccines for their people if they actually cared about them. So let's continue breaking this down. As Adam Levick writes in a piece for Camera, which is a media watchdog organization that deals with anti-Israel lies in the media, He writes as follows: the Palestinian Authority Ministry of Health is responsible by virtue of Article 17 of the Oslo Accords for health care, including vaccinations, in Judea and Samaria and Gaza. As this international agreement actually says, powers and responsibilities in the sphere of health in the West Bank and the Gaza Strip will be transferred to the Palestinian Authority, including the health insurance system. In this regard, the Palestinian side shall continue the vaccination of the population with the vaccines listed in Schedule 3. Again, the Oslo Accords and international agreement. The Palestinian Authority hasn't approached Israel for help in obtaining COVID vaccines, and their officials have stated that they don't expect help from Jerusalem. Israel never said that they wouldn't assist the Palestinian Authority securing COVID vaccines if asked. The Palestinian Authority claims to have acquired millions of doses of the vaccine from foreign countries. Efforts to coordinate Israeli-Palestinian cooperation on procuring vaccines for the Palestinian Arabs was reportedly damaged by the Palestinian Authority decision to cut off all coordination with Israel. The Palestinian Authority has their own healthcare system and their own vaccine acquisition and distribution regime, and again has not asked Jerusalem for assistance in this regard. Israeli settlers, meaning those living east of the 1949 armistice lines in Judea and Samaria, are Israeli citizens. Palestinian Arabs living under Palestinian rule are not. Finally, to highlight the utter hypocrisy of the journalists and media outlets shaming Israel in this modern blood libel, we have the following powerful tweets. As Elder of Zion points out in his tweet, Lebanon has no plan to vaccinate Palestinians for COVID-19, waiting for the media and NGO outrage. And again, we have Arsen Ostrovsky adding in response to a Human Rights Watch anti-Semitic pile-on tweet, did you know that the UK is vaccinating at one of the world's fastest rates, but is excluding millions in France and Germany? Guys, anyone familiar with Israel knows that we go over and beyond what we have to do in order to care for our Arab Muslim neighbors who self-identify as Palestinians, even as their own leaders and the Palestinian Authority and Hamas do not care for them. Again, if only they would use the hundreds of millions of dollars in aid to pay for vaccines instead of paying terrorists and murderers sitting in jail. But to Christian Amanpour and the other journalists around the world, they don't want to be bothered with facts. They just want to bash the Jewish state of Israel and make us look horrible. Welcome to the modern 21st century blood libel against the Jews. Just as we have survived thousands of years of blood libels, and today we thrive in our ancestral homeland as our sovereign, we will also outlive this modern horrendous blood libel as well.
Pulse of Israel, frontline videos from the Holy Land. Support our work by donating today.